I may never be able to escape the X franchise ever again. Curse my hubris! Hello and welcome to Then and Now, the show where I, AJ the Comic Archivist, compares the very first issue of a title with the latest first issue of that same title. After the last two X-Men videos, I was hoping to take a break and do one on the new Birds of Prey. However, that got pushed into being a giant-sized one-shot to be released in January, which doesn't give me hope for it, but hey, that is now a set January video. And since Excalibur was second place on the Twitter poll, which you should totally follow me on Twitter to take part in, I'm now heading back to the Dawn of X with Excalibur number 1. This may get a little intense, as the original Excalibur run is one of my personal favorite X titles ever. Can Tini Howard beat out the X-King himself, Chris Claremont? Cue the opening credits and let's get to it.
Igitus figitus sumba kazing. I want your attention, everything.
Excalibur as a title really begins with the shaky history of the Marvel UK imprint. An imprint for Marvel to be able to distribute specifically to the UK audiences, which did mean a change in storytelling tactics. Probably the most important character created at this time, at least in relation to Excalibur, was Captain Britain and his mythology, who was very much tied into Arthurian legend, the heart of Britain, and a lighthouse that was a convergent point for all realities. Moreover, in the mid to late 80s, sales were down outside of their licensed comics, like Transformers or the still going under a different publisher, Doctor Who Weekly. Here's where I think, and yes, I cannot find anything to confirm or deny this, that Excalibur is set in the UK and reads the way it does. It is very much more in line with the adventure and indie comics from the UK at the time than the standard books Marvel proper was publishing. For me, it is a double down to try and pull readers into their UK line of stuff. Besides feeling like a UK book, it is also a spin-off of the X books, with Kitty Pryde and Nightcrawler, two top-tier fan-favorite characters, being moved into this book. Though to be fair, in-universe, they were kind of free agents after the air-quote death of the X-Men in Dallas that actually transported them to Australia, but that's a different show, trust me. Again, that is just a theory. A comic theory. Thanks for... Oh, right. So the original run ran for 125 issues, new members would be added, old members would be taken out, and the mythology would shift to being much closer to the X-Men mythos, including them moving and operating out of Mer Island. Sales did eventually dip enough so that the title could be cancelled to return Kitty Pryde, Nightcrawler, and, at the time, Colossus, back to the X-Men in 1998. Then a 4-issue miniseries came out in 2001, which showcased Captain Britain's rise to kingship of Otherworld. Basically, it's the Marvel version of Avalon. The best part about this is basically that it was a very sword and sorcery angled book, with Black Knight, Crusader X, and even Psylocke during her Asian ninja phase being in it. In 2004, during the fallout of the destruction of Genosha, another Excalibur title came out. This was all about Magneto and Xavier's partnership to rebuild the destroyed mutant nation. This title would go until the benchmark House of M storyline concluded the series and most series at the time. However, when the 616 returned to normal, a new Excalibur title would come out, called New Excalibur, creatively enough. It was much more in line with the original team concept, and while it kept the feel of an X-Books more than the classic tone, it is Chris Claremont back to making the team, so it does feel pretty righteous, and Juggernaut during it is kind of my favorite character ever. Well, there would also be a finale miniseries crossover in 2007 with X-Men, called X-Men Die by the Sword. Concepts and some of the characters would go into the Captain Britain and the MI-13 comic. Now, for a while, that was the end of Excalibur, becoming just a really fond, bitter memory in long-term readers. That is until 2019 and the Dawn of X rebirth of the X franchise after Disney bought out Fox. I've covered that a few times, so let's not get bogged down with who bought who and who abandoned who dead in a ditch. Point is, the future is now, so let's check out the past. The original Excalibur Special Edition number 1 is written by Chris Claremont, pencils by Alan Davis, inks by Paul Neary, letters by Tom Orchowski, and colors by Glynis Oliver. And yes, I'm probably going to start doing this in most of my videos because everyone involved in the creation of any comic is rather important. It begins with Kitty Pryde sleeping, but don't worry, she's illegal in this series, so it's not that creepy. As she sleeps though, she dreams about being pampered like a starlet and then thrown into a movie set in a new costume. On set is the then current roster of the X-Men, and they're lounging about waiting for Xavier to call action. Kitty is so glad to see her dead friends, although what's less comforting is, well, all of this dream is very disconcerting. But hey, it's brought to you by Mojoverse Pictures, so what can you do? Then Rachel Summers, my favorite Phoenix, shows up to give a really great panel that can be used for any franchise you want. That nice feeling about seeing Rachel leaves quickly as Xavier has the X-Men try to draw and quarter Rachel for seemingly abandoning them, which to be fair she kinda did. She does escape and give a cryptic "be seeing you," which I think means that this may actually be Rachel's psychic form eavesdropping on Kitty's dreams. I know many shippers online who wouldn't be surprised about that. But then the X-Men turn their attentions to Kitty as werewolves leap from their mouths to try and devour her. Kitty awakens terrified back on Murrah Island where she's been staying. Oh, there's also a Phoenix Sunrise, which may be the best drink that does not exist. Kitty, however, is trying to calm herself down because she's been having these issues ever since the mutant massacre where her body's default is actually to be phased, so she has to do that Patrick Swayze ghost thing to force herself to be solid. Yet, as she slowly remembers how she fell asleep, the sadness hits her again because, to her, truly the X-Men are dead. Cut off the coast of England with McGann, another Marvel UK character, as she frolics with some dolphins before seeing the Phoenix Sunrise and flying to her home in a lighthouse. However, the place is in shambles, though not from an attack. We get a hint as to what's wrong, with the Exposition News Network airing non-stop news about the X-Men's death, specifically Psylocke, the most beautiful in Britain and a mutant. McGann's upset, but you know who takes it like a champ? Betsy Braddock's brother Brian Braddock, Captain Britain. And by taking it like a champ, I do mean the drunken champ who's had a relapse halfway through the movie so they can have that emotional climax. Fighting. So McGann leaves, figuring she needs to help, just like the way he helped her before, but she can't do that alone. Meanwhile, let's cut over to the swashbuckling Nightcrawler in the Murrah Island Danger Room. God, I love Nightcrawler, especially during his Errol Flynn days. Of course, after the mutant massacre, Nightcrawler's also been recovering with his teleportation powers, draining him to the point where he is super weak, even by teleporting just a couple meters away. Luckily though, Kitty Pryde comes through the wall of the super advanced room, crashing the entire system. Seriously, how much money has Kitty's constant disuse of doors cost mutant kind? Then, of course, we have to have the obligatory "stop pushing yourself, don't you care about being alive?" argument, but more importantly, it also leads to Kurt Wagner bringing up that he had a very similar dream. To kickstart the actual plot, though, Gatecrasher of the TechNet Bounty Hunter group crashes in. Although for a giant painted hippopotamus, yeah, that's a she, is fairly polite. McGann then flies in and is ready to throw down with Gatecrasher to defend Captain Britain. However, it's not Britain that they're after. We know this because of interdimensional Emma Frost here, Opal Luna Saturnin, saying basically as much. Also, we do get a bit of a Kitty may not exactly be straight moment, but hey, that's a different show and I really don't want to be embroiled in that current Twitter war. Opal has sent TechNet to capture the reality fugitive Phoenix. But Phoenix is an X-Man, so Kitty and the crew is ready to defend her, even if she's not actually there. Gatecrasher's lizard there also teleports in the rest of TechNet, so it's fight time. And by fight time, I of course mean a page later everyone has been captured by TechNet. Well, okay, everyone except for Nightcrawler was captured. Nightcrawler was able to teleport out of there just in the nick of time. Enough about that, let's actually see where Rachel Summers is in this book. Ooh, what a lovely tea party. But like everyone else who's been around Rachel in this comic, the guests at this tea party chain her up and try to hold her down. There really is some symbolism here I should be talking about, but my V for Vendetta reader's history broke my highbrow glasses. So, werewolves sent by Mojo come out of nowhere and attack everyone. While her telekinesis doesn't work directly on them, she does get mad enough to use her chains and blast one of the werewolves through a wall. That wall obviously will lead to the magical land of mid to late 80s London, which we know is an amazing place and a land of opportunity. Yes, that's sarcasm. So the werewolves follow Phoenix out the hole, but luckily the local police can use their guns to... Okay, that's the last London bashing joke, I swear. Except for this one right now. Rachel flees to the tube, which is apparently running on time for her escape, although Rachel doesn't seem to like that at all. Now, after summoning a flaming bird to kill a silver dog thing, why does Rachel seem surprised that everyone on the train isn't happy and staring at her like, oh my god? She escapes either way. Back over at Brian Braddock's Broody Binge Fest, Kurt throws Captain Britain into the ocean. It was the only way to get the smell off him, I'm sure. However, the ocean can't wash away the depression of losing his sister. But Kurt is done with the pity party, so let's cue the obligatory "we're survivors, so we have to do all we can" in a clipped German accent argument, Kurt leaving, and then the emotional self-reflective destruction. Yes, it is kinda cliche, and I may joke, but the emotion here is actually really, really good, and a phenomenal pairing between the writing and the art. Meanwhile, Rachel is wandering the foggy streets and looks into a shop, just mainly to give us a fun little Camelot 3000 nod, and to see Excalibur rising from a stone. But that is before TechNet shows up and the Deep Throat Master of the Multiverse captures her. Now, I'm not entirely sure why this thing creeps me out so much, but fortunately, before anything else can happen, the werewolves attack. During the fight, Nightcrawler hops in too. A lucky swing from a werewolf cuts through Greeny's sacks, spewing the girls into the street in a thick, viscous fluid. Almost sexual, isn't Smithers? And then Captain Britain comes in to save the day. The fight continues until eventually the TechNet and werewolves run off. Everyone gives hugs all around, and there's a nice victory. The Coda basically has them talking that they should all form a team to be good guys and deal with what is happening, even if the X-Men aren't around. They become Excalibur. I may make a few jokes here and there, but honestly, this and the New Mutants comic that came out around the same time was the ultimate way to create a legacy for a team that wasn't actually dead, but entering a new direction. Yes, that does sort of take a bit of the weight out of the emotion, but that's also what makes this brilliant. It deals with the fallout of the deaths of close friends and family, while still being steps forward in saying that these damaged people, who are ultimately good, can help each other become better. Does the new Excalibur reach that level? Well, let's find out now. The 2019 Excalibur is written by Tini Howard, with pencils and inks by Marcus Toe, colors by Eric Arciniega, and letters by Corey Petit. We begin with the previously on, kind of, which is apparently the day mutants got their utopia. No, not that one. Apocalypse sent a psychic message to the most powerful magic users, introducing himself to his fellow sorcerers. I want to give this a WTF because Apocalypse is not a magic user. He is hardcore tech. But hey, let's continue. The actual plot begins in Otherworld, where Camelot is under siege and Morgane Le Fay takes the time to wash someone's hair. No, actually, she's showing off the weed, which I assume is Krakoa, polluting and desecrating Mighty Avalon's water and magic. The actual plot begins at Braddock Academy in England, as Betsy Braddock is packing. Brian is there too, with Megan and their daughter Maggie. Also, Brian makes a stupid comment about how Bette used to cry when she would wear a dress, but that is a really lazy attempt to try and tomboy her up, I think. I really don't want to get into that now. Brian and Betsy talk as he walks her to the Krakoa gate, even though she's not exactly done packing. But then again, when she goes through the gate, she comes out in a dress, so maybe it's just a weird cut to later. However, I do really like Betsy being unsure about how to act when she's been an Asian ninja for the last 2 decades, which has altered her views of who she is. It's this really good thing. Elsewhere, Trinary comes to tell Apocalypse about a gate that he's been inquiring about. Although I am mistaken, he's not Apocalypse. He's the mutant Darwinist formerly known as Apocalypse. And no, I'm never going to get behind Apocalypse being allowed on Krakoa. He wasn't a Magneto-style villain. He wasn't, oh man, mutants must be stronger so we can stop humans. He was literally evil and didn't care about anything but being the strongest, and having the strongest mutants around him, and would hate Paradise because A, he's not in charge, and B, they're all just snowflakes deserving to be melted. This whole raised in paradise to flourish is so antithetical to who he is, it really annoys me. We literally have a giant, still very popular storyline which shows what his air quote paradise would be like. Wow, I am so sorry about that tangent. Trinary brings Apocalypse to the gate that won't work, but he knows that it's not a gate to anywhere on this plane. However, a barrier spell around it means that they'll need a champion of the Otherworld to get there. Later, in North Yorkshire, a bunch of kids are channeling the powers of Avalon because hey, what else is there to do on a Friday night? Morgane Le Fay, and I'm sorry if I slip and call her Morgane Le Fay, gets summoned, and she charges these kids to take care of the mutant flowers in our realm, while she does what she can do to destroy the gate on her end. Then we cut back to the party where Betsy has to deal with her asshole brother Jamie, who's been hatched and is just being a righteous dick. It's 4 pages of family issues that just boils down to how Brian should know that Jamie is back. It works out even better since after Betsy leaves, Apocalypse comes up to tell her that he needs Brian on the island so that they can use the Captain Britain amulet to open the gate to the other world. So Betsy has several reasons to go back to Braddock Academy to get her brother, but he is already in uniform after getting a call to go to Avalon. Betsy then dons her outfit and decides to go with him. Well, who would have guessed that they'd poof right into the throne room of Camelot and have Morgaine ready to be evil? She orders her coven from before to drown Betsy in her scrying pool to see if it'll do anything to stop the flowers. You know, 'cause logic. Back on the island, Rogue and Gambit are brought in to help Apocalypse. Oh, and since Jubilee talked to Betsy earlier, though it was literally just to see about getting more drinks, she's on the team too. Good for her. Wonder who's babysitting. Actually, I really do like this because Jubilee and Psylocke have a very solid history. It just feels odd that she's asked onto the team because she asked Bets if she needed another drink. In the other world, Morgan is being an evil witch as you do, complete with mind-controlling Captain Britain, so now he's Captain Thatcher. Nah, too old of a reference. She made him Brexit being a good guy. To speed this along, Rogue is at the portal on Krakoa to try and do something to the gate like channel the energy or something like that. But Betsy literally drops a giant sword on the other gate in the other world, which then surges a ton of energy through Rogue, who then gets engulfed by the Krakoa flowers, and then Betsy puts on the Captain Britain amulet and teleports away from her brother and his evil witch queen. Betsy then appears next to the cocooned Rogue, wearing a pretty stylish Captain Britain outfit of her own. I think that makes this her third time of being Captain Britain in the 616, I don't know. Oh, and there is an epilogue, but frankly I have zero care for that particular coven of youths, so their former leader taking their Zeo crystals to the court of the Crimson King means very, very little to me. I'm actually split on this as a comic by itself. It is roughly 40 pages, a little under what the original had, and honestly, it can easily be trimmed down to 20 pages, with very little actually affecting the story being told. Especially with how rushed it seems to get Betsy to Krakoa. It legitimately feels like whoever was the editor on this decided to hack job two separate issues together. Again, Jubilee is just called over because she was seen saying a sentence to Betsy. Betsy only glosses over what could have been a fantastic body issues discussion and feeling alienated to just being, oh, okay. Rogue and Gambit are there because they weren't doing anything since Mr. and Mrs. X got canned a couple months ago, and Apocalypse, to me as a long-term reader, comes off as so out of place here that it is jarring. And just for clarity, the name gag works twice. One when he originally says it and Trinary is like, oh yeah, I could totally pronounce that. And then you actually chuckle when Rogue decides to repeat it. So props to Rogue for being able to pronounce an imaginary word, language, letter thing. So I guess that leaves the comparison. This is such an unfair 1v1 that is so weighted against the new X-Men that it isn't even funny. The original book had an emotional weight of the X-Men being supposedly dead, and 3 X members not linked to a book at the time being able to hook them into a new team with ease. There's a lot of character moments in this in both the big melodramatic way everyone deals with their emotions, hilariously counter to what I brought up in my Haunted Mansion reader's history, as well as in the action scenes. Similar to the last Then and Now on the X-Men, this is because, especially by the late 80s, Chris Claremont had been the voice of the X franchise for so long that he was just continuing themes and ideas that he's been plugging away at. But this new Excalibur doesn't have that same hooking feeling. As I said, Betsy really should have been the emotional anchor of this story, and yet she's primarily a reactionary character. Be it because of the Jamie scene that went on way too long and was wicked annoying, or just replying to what Brian was saying in the beginning. The one moment that worked well, though, was literally just a single panel when she zoned out and didn't hear what Jubilee said originally, so it had to be repeated. That was a decent moment, but that was literally just what it was, a moment. A single panel. Everything else in this is just overly long diatribes that brings nothing to the book outside of padding to make it 40 pages long. It's not a bad book by any means, but it sort of just exists there without being outright bad or good enough to be a top draw. At least that's what I'm calling now, and I think issue 2 is going to be okay, but that is going to be a wait and see. On that bombshell, that's the end of this video. If you agree, disagree, or just want to say your own 2 cents on these comics, let me know in the comments below. While you're down there, let me know what you'd like to see on the next Then and Now, or any of the other shows we have on this channel. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and please consider donating to the Patreon or direct donations. All of that is in the description below. More than any of that, though, I'm AJ Carey, the Comic Archivist, and stay golden, Inklings.
Pockety, pockety, walkety, whack. Abracadabra, shrink in size, very small. We got to save enough room for all. Higgitus, higgitus.